You killed 7 men.
Yes,
and
you
I'm
did.
asking you, what got you to kill the 7
And I'm
men?
telling you because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't you get it?
For a long time, there was a prevailing assumption that only men were capable of engaging in reprehensible behavior. However, now we know that women too are capable of committing crimes just like men do. The individuals I'm about to show you exemplify the most heinous acts committed by women, from displaying an utter lack of remorse after murdering their husbands to driving at breakneck speeds to intentionally kill their boyfriends in the driver's seat. Here are dangerous women reacting to life sentences. Mackenzie Shrilla.
Mackenzie decided death was the ultimate goal that day, and she alone made that decision for Dominic and Davion.
Mackenzie Shrilla's life was entangled in a toxic relationship with her boyfriend, Dominic Russo. Their love story began like any other, filled with passion and excitement. But as time went on, cracks started to appear in their seemingly perfect relationship. Friends and family noticed the tension between them, and rumors of constant fighting and arguments began to circulate. The couple's relationship was marked by a series of ups and downs, with frequent breakups and makeups. They were trapped in a cycle of love and hate, unable to break free from the toxic patterns that consumed their lives. Mackenzie's friends often witnessed her emotional turmoil as she would confide in them about the volatile nature of her relationship with Dominic. But it wasn't just emotional turmoil that plagued Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship. There were instances of physical violence as well. Mackenzie's anger would often escalate to dangerous levels, leading her to make violent threats towards Dominic. She would threaten to harm him, even going as far as threatening to crash her car with him inside. The couple's fights became more frequent and intense, with each argument pushing them closer to the edge. Their relationship had become a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. Mackenzie's friends and family grew increasingly concerned for her well-being, urging her to leave the toxic relationship behind. On the night of the tragic crash, tensions between Mackenzie and Dominic had reached a boiling point. They had yet another heated argument filled with anger and resentment. The details of what exactly transpired in the car leading up to the crash remain unclear, but the evidence presented during the trial painted a grim picture. Prosecutors argued that Mackenzie deliberately drove her car into a brick wall to end their tumultuous relationship once and for all. They claimed that she had carefully planned the crash, choosing a secluded route and accelerating to a high speed of 160 kilometers per h, 100 miles per hour. Her mission was clear: to cause death and destruction. The crash itself was devastating. Mackenzie's Camry barreled down the street, crashing into a building without any signs of slowing down. The impact was catastrophic, resulting in the deaths of both Dominic Russo and his friend, Davion Flanagan. Mackenzie herself was left injured and was rushed to the hospital. The judge presiding over the case emphasized that this was not a case of reckless driving, but rather a deliberate act of murder. The evidence presented, including the video footage of the crash, left no room for doubt. Mackenzie's actions were purposeful and intentional, driven by her desire to end her toxic relationship in the most tragic way possible.
We're all friends, and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away, and I'm so sorry.
As Mackenzie stood before the court, tearfully apologizing to the families of the victims, she claimed to have no recollection of what happened that fateful night. Whether her memory loss was genuine or an attempt to evade responsibility remains a mystery, but the video evidence spoke volumes, capturing the chilling moment when Mackenzie's car collided with the wall, forever altering the lives of 3 families. Natalie Keepers.
Keepers was calm as the judge delivered his decision today in the courtroom.
It all began in 2016 when 13-year-old Nicole Lovell's life was tragically cut short. Nicole, a vibrant young girl with her whole life ahead of her, fell victim to a heinous crime that shocked the nation. Nicole was lured from her home, her innocence exploited by those she trusted. She was led into the depths of the woods where she met a gruesome fate. Nicole was brutally stabbed to death, her body left abandoned in the wilderness of North Carolina. The investigation into Nicole's murder quickly uncovered a web of deceit and betrayal. It was revealed that Natalie Keepers, a former student at Virginia Tech, played a significant role in the planning and execution of this heinous act. As the trial unfolded, the courtroom was filled with raw emotions. Keepers' parents, torn between their love for their daughter and the devastating reality of her actions, sat in disbelief. On the other side, Nicole's grieving mother, seeking justice for her daughter, found solace in the courtroom proceedings. The defense attorneys, faced with the overwhelming evidence against their client, had an uphill battle. They did not comment on whether they planned to appeal the case, leaving many wondering what their next move would be. Ultimately, it was up to the judge to deliver the final verdict. After considering the jury's recommendation, the judge sentenced Natalie Keepers to 45 years in prison, with 5 years suspended. This life sentence reflects the severity of her involvement in the murder and the danger she posed to the public. Natalie, her face pale and eyes filled with a mix of fear and disbelief, struggled to comprehend the weight of the sentence that had just been handed down. The reality of spending the majority of her life behind bars began to sink in. Keepers' parents, parents, sitting just a few feet away, were visibly shaken. Their daughter, once full of promise and potential, now faced a future defined by the consequences of her choices. Their faces etched with sorrow and regret, they grappled with the devastating impact this would have on their family. On the other side of the courtroom, Nicole Lovell's mother, still grieving the loss of her beloved daughter, found a sense of closure in the judge's decision. It was a bittersweet moment for her, knowing that the person responsible for her daughter's untimely death would face the consequences of her actions.
If I was there, I would have stopped it. I would have stopped it. I wouldn't have let him do anything. Even if I had to see him do that to her, the first thing I would have done is start the car and drove.
Shelby Isaacs.
So breaking tonight, a woman collapses here in the courtroom after she is convicted of killing a couple and their unborn child in an argument over hair weave.
It was a case that shocked the nation, a tale of deception, violence, and shattered lives. Today, we bring you the chilling story of Shelby Isaacs, a 19-year-old woman whose actions would forever change the course of multiple families. Welcome to our channel, where we uncover the truth behind the headlines. It all began at the peaceful Sycamore Lake Apartments, a place where residents never expected such horror to unfold. Shelby Isaacs, a seemingly ordinary young woman, had a dark secret lurking beneath her innocent facade. Her motive? Money, and she was willing to go to extreme lengths to get it back. It was a sunny afternoon when Shelby Isaacs hatched her sinister plan. She lured her victims, a pregnant woman, a man, and their unborn child, to the apartments under the guise of a hair weave purchase. Little did they know, their lives were about to be tragically cut short. As the victims arrived, unsuspecting of the danger that awaited them, Shelby Isaacs opened fire on their car, unleashing a hail of bullets. Chaos erupted as the sound of gunshots echoed through the air. The trial that followed was a gripping spectacle, with the prosecution presenting a compelling case against Shelby Isaacs. They painted a picture of a cold-blooded killer driven by greed and a desire for retribution. But the defense had a different story to tell. Shelby Isaacs' defense attorney argued that there was no physical evidence directly linking her to the crime. They claimed that the only witness placing her at the scene was her co-defendant, Victoria Say. The defense pointed out inconsistencies in Say's testimony, questioning her credibility and suggesting that she may have had ulterior motives. The courtroom was divided, tension thick in the air. The jury listened intently to the arguments presented by both sides, weighing the evidence and testimonies. And finally, after days of deliberation, they reached a verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jury foreperson stood up to deliver the verdict. Guilty. The word hung in the air, a heavy blow to Shelby Isaacs and her defense team. And in that moment, her world came crashing down. Shelby Isaacs' reaction was nothing short of shocking. Her face turned pale. Her eyes widened in disbelief. She clutched her chest, gasping for air as tears welled up in her eyes. The weight of the verdict seemed to crush her, and she let out a gut-wrenching cry. "Mommy!" The sound echoed through the courtroom, leaving everyone stunned. Shelby Isaacs collapsed to the floor, her body trembling uncontrollably. The sobs that escaped her were a heartbreaking symphony of despair. It was a moment that would forever be etched in the memories of those present. Bailiffs rushed to Shelby Isaacs' side, helping her to her feet and escorting her out of the courtroom. The emotional toll of the trial had finally caught up with her, and the reality of a life sentence began to sink in. The weight of her actions and the consequences she now faced were overwhelming. The sentencing also came as a shock to her family.
Isaac's family left the courtroom in tears.
Shayna Hubers.
After a 2-week trial, a jury found her guilty of shooting and killing Poston while he sat at a dining room table.
And instead of picking up the phone and calling for help, she raises the gun again and fires it more.
It all began in the small town of Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, where two lives collided in a whirlwind of passion and turmoil. Ryan Poston, a successful attorney, and Shayna Hubers, a young woman with dreams of love and companionship, crossed paths on the vast landscape of social media. In 2011, Ryan, 28 years old at the time, and Shayna, just 20, connected on Facebook. What started as a seemingly innocent online encounter quickly blossomed into a romantic relationship. However, their love story was far from conventional. Their relationship was marked by constant ups and downs, characterized by intense arguments and frequent breakups. The couple's connection was fueled by a toxic mix of passion and volatility. Despite the turbulence, they couldn't seem to stay away from each other. On the night of October 12, 2012, tragedy struck. Ryan had plans for the evening, a date with Miss Ohio USA 2012, Audrey Bolt. Little did he know that this would be the last night of his life. Meanwhile, Shayna Hubers was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. As the night unfolded, tensions between her and Ryan reached a boiling point. What happened next would send shockwaves through the community and forever changed the lives of those involved. In a chilling turn of events, Shayna made a call to 911, claiming that she had shot Ryan in self-defense. She alleged that he had been abusive towards her and that she feared for her life. The authorities arrived at the scene to find a lifeless Ryan Poston, a promising young man whose future was tragically cut short. Throughout the subsequent interrogation, Shayna maintained her self-defense claim. However, her behavior during this critical time raised eyebrows and cast doubt on her narrative. Inappropriate statements and even singing Amazing Grace left investigators questioning the authenticity of her claims. As the investigation unfolded, the truth behind the events leading up to Ryan's murder began to emerge. Prosecutors argued that the motive for the killing was Ryan's desire to end their tumultuous relationship. They painted a picture of a woman consumed by obsession, unable to let go. On the other hand, Shayna's defense team stood firm in their assertion of self-defense. They presented evidence of Shayna's alleged abuse and manipulation at the hands of Ryan. The courtroom became a battleground of conflicting narratives, leaving the jury with the weighty task of determining the truth.
She said she was going to plead insanity, but then she said that she was too smart because she has an IQ of Einstein, up to the IQ of Einstein.
After hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Shayna Hubers was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years. However, this would not be the end of the legal battle that would captivate the nation. There would be a retrial that resulted in another guilty verdict. However, this time, she would take the stand and maintain her stance of self-defense.
I felt like I needed to do what he was telling me to do.
Camia Gamet.
At trial, the way I was portrayed, mostly everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted off of lies.
It all started in May 2013 in the quiet city of Jackson, Mississippi. Camia Gamet, a 30-year-old woman, and her boyfriend, Marcel Hill, were living together in a small apartment. At first glance, they seemed like an ordinary couple, but behind closed doors, a dark and violent relationship was brewing. Camia had a history of domestic violence, and it wasn't long before her anger and aggression escalated to a horrifying level. In a previous incident, she had attacked Marcel with a hammer, leaving him battered and bruised. But despite the signs of danger, Marcel chose to stay with Camia, hoping that things would change. Fast forward to that fateful night in May. Tensions were running high between Camia and Marcel, and a heated argument erupted in their apartment. The details of what transpired that night are chilling. Witnesses reported hearing screams and the sound of a struggle coming from the apartment. As the argument escalated, Camia's anger reached a boiling point. In a fit of rage, she grabbed a knife and brutally stabbed Marcel multiple times. The sheer brutality of the attack was unimaginable. Marcel fought for his life, but it was a losing battle. The apartment turned into a scene of horror, with blood splattered across the walls and floors. The police were called to the scene, and when they arrived, they found Marcel lying lifeless on the floor. Camia, covered in blood, was arrested on the spot. She claimed self-defense, stating that she feared for her life. But the evidence told a different story. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of violence in their relationship. Witnesses came forward, recounting instances of Camia's aggression and the fear they had seen in Marcel's eyes. It became clear that this was not a case of self-defense, but a calculated act of cold-blooded murder. The trial that followed was nothing short of a media frenzy. The courtroom was packed with spectators eager to witness the shocking details of the crime. Camia, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, sat silently as the prosecution presented their case. The evidence against Camia was overwhelming. The knife used in the murder was found with her fingerprints all over it. Forensic experts testified to the brutality of the attack, leaving the jury in disbelief. Despite her attorney's attempts to paint her as a victim, the jury found Camia guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict was read, Camia's face turned pale and her eyes filled with tears. The weight of her actions and the realization of a life sentence without parole hit her like a ton of bricks. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably as the courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions. The judge, in his final remarks, described the murder as one of the most heinous and cold-blooded acts he had ever witnessed. The severity of the crime and Camia's lack of remorse left an indelible mark on everyone present. The judge was visibly angry at Camia's lack of remorse. He said,
"Then you're gonna shut your mouth or I'm gonna have some duct tape put on it."
Rosa Rivera Kim.
I'm not gonna do anything to bring them back. I would.
It was a fateful day in 2012 when Rosa Rivera Kim's life took a devastating turn. On that day, she made a choice that would forever change the lives of those involved. Driving under the influence, Rivera Kim crashed her car into a hotel cabana, tragically taking the life of a pregnant 26-year-old woman. The impact of the crash was catastrophic, leaving the victim and her unborn child with no chance of survival. It was a heart-wrenching scene that shook the community to its core. Fast forward to the present, and Rosa Rivera Kim has finally faced the consequences of her actions. After a lengthy legal battle, she has been sentenced to life in prison for her role in this senseless tragedy. As the judge delivered the life sentence, Rivera Kim's emotions overflowed. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the gravity of her actions and the impact it had on the victim's family. But for the grieving family, Rivera Kim's tears and remorse were little consolation. Their lives were forever shattered by the loss of a beloved daughter, sister, and mother-to-be.
Still days when it hits me and it almost takes my breath away. Nothing compares to the pain of burying your child, and in the case of us, a grandchild as well.
The judge, recognizing the severity of the crime, also imposed an additional 15 years of probation on Rivera Kim. Her driver's license has been permanently suspended, ensuring that she will never again pose a threat on the roads. As Rivera Kim was led away in handcuffs, the weight of her actions and the reality of her life sentence began to sink in. She now faces the daunting prospect of spending the rest of her days behind bars. Elsa Segura.
A Hennepin County judge sentenced a former probation officer to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A jury convicted her in the kidnapping and murder of realtor Monique Baugh.
Our story begins in the quiet town of Maple Grove, where Monique Baugh, a successful and well-respected realtor, was living her dream life. She had a flourishing career, a loving family, and a bright future ahead of her. But little did she know that her life was about to take a dark and tragic turn. It was a cold winter's day in December 2019 when Monique Baugh received a call that would change her life forever. Elsa Segura, a former probation officer, contacted Baugh under the pretense of a potential home showing. Unbeknownst to Baugh, this was all part of a sinister plan. Segura, consumed by jealousy and envy, had become entangled in a web of deceit and betrayal. She was part of a group that sought to extract information from Baugh, but their intentions quickly turned sinister. As Baugh arrived at the designated location, little did she know that she was walking into a trap. Baugh entered the property, unaware of the danger that awaited her. It was there that she was ambushed and forcibly abducted by Segura and her accomplices. Baugh's world turned upside down in an instant as she was thrown into a U-Haul van, her pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears. The van sped away, leaving behind a trail of fear and confusion. Baugh's loved ones were left in a state of panic, desperately searching for answers. Meanwhile, Segura and her cohorts had a sinister plan in mind. They transported Baugh to her boyfriend's house, where they intended to extract the information they sought. As they arrived at the boyfriend's house, a masked gunman emerged from the shadows. His intentions clear. He ruthlessly shot Baugh's boyfriend multiple times, leaving him fighting for his life. Baugh herself was then shot and killed. Her life tragically cut short, and at the center of it all was Elsa Segura, the former probation officer who had orchestrated this heinous act. Her role in the kidnapping and murder of Monique Baugh was undeniable, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. As the investigation unfolded, the community was left in shock. How could someone who was once entrusted with upholding the law stoop to such depths of depravity? The revelation of Segura's involvement sent shockwaves through the town, leaving residents questioning the very fabric of their community. Throughout the trial, Segura showed no remorse, no emotion. Her cold-hearted demeanor only added to the horror of the crime. The courtroom was filled with grief-stricken family members, their pain and anguish palpable as they sought justice for their beloved Monique Baugh. The judge, recognizing the gravity of Segura's involvement, handed down a life sentence without parole, mirroring the punishment given to the other perpetrators. It was a moment of bittersweet justice for Baugh's family, who now faced the daunting task of sitting through 2 more trials in the case. Benny Duarte.
A convicted drunk driver who killed 3 people will now spend more than 50 years in prison.
Yeah, today's emotional sentencing in Santa Ana, the victim's parents confronted the woman and they offered no mercy.
Benny Duarte was a drunken driver who caused a fiery Southern California crash, killing 3 Las Vegas teenagers in 2019. The courtroom was filled with tension as the judge delivered the verdict in the case of Benny Duarte. After a thorough examination of the evidence and hearing the heart-wrenching testimonies from the families of the victims, the jury found Duarte guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of driving under the influence. The weight of her actions was undeniable, and the judge wasted no time in delivering a sentence that would forever alter the course of Duarte's life. With a stern voice, the judge announced that Duarte would be sentenced to 51 years to life in prison. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions, with the families of the victims finding some solace in the fact that justice had been served. However, for Duarte, this marked the beginning of a long and arduous journey behind bars. As the families of Brooke Hawley, Dylan Mack, and A.J. Duarte Rossi gathered in the courtroom. Their pain and grief were palpable. They had waited for this moment to confront Benny Duarte, the woman responsible for the loss of their loved ones. With tears streaming down their faces, they shared memories of their children, painting a vivid picture of the vibrant lives that had been tragically cut short. In a powerful and emotional display, the parents played a video that showcased the laughter, dreams, and aspirations of their children. As the footage played, Duarte couldn't help but be overwhelmed by the enormity of her actions. She wiped away tears, realizing the irreparable damage she had caused. Duarte, in a moment of remorse, stood before the court and expressed her deep regret. She took full responsibility for her actions, acknowledging the pain she had inflicted upon the families. However, her words could never undo the devastation that had been unleashed. One mother, in an act of unimaginable compassion, expressed that she would trade places with Duarte, as at least Duarte's children were still alive. This poignant moment served as a reminder of the profound loss experienced by the victims' families and the lasting impact of Duarte's choices. At the end of it all, Duarte did show remorse after her sentencing.
I didn't think further into the consequences. I just want to say that I'm truly sorry.
Do you think that her apology was good enough? Let us know in the comments. Aileen Wuornos. Wuornos confessed to killing at least 7 men, leaving a trail of blood and terror in her wake. The details of these murders were shocking and gruesome, painting a picture of a woman consumed by rage and a desire for revenge. The media dubbed her the Damsel of Death, a name that would forever be associated with her heinous crimes. After her arrest, she pleaded guilty, citing self-defense. But the prosecutors dismissed her self-defense claims, saying that her story varied with the subsequent telling. In her initial confession to law enforcement, Wuornos recounted that Mallory had offered her a ride while she was hitchhiking, and they eventually found themselves in a secluded wooded area to engage in an exchange of money for sexual services. As tensions escalated, an argument erupted between Wuornos and Mallory. Feeling threatened that Mallory intended to rob her and sexually assault her, Wuornos seized a bag containing a firearm. A struggle ensued over the bag, with Wuornos emerging victorious. She then aimed the gun at Mallory, accusing him of planning to assault her, to which Mallory vehemently denied the allegations, asserting, "No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't." Her arrest and subsequent trial captivated the nation, shining a spotlight on the dark underbelly of society. The jury found her guilty and sentenced her to death, a decision that would spark controversy and debate. Many argued that Wuornos' ongoing mental illness should have spared her from execution, while others believed that justice had been served. Before the sentencing, Wuornos was allowed to give a speech.
I have made peace with my Lord, and I have asked forgiveness. I am sorry that my acts of self-defense ended up in court like this, but I take full responsibility for my actions. It was them or me. I am sorry for all the pain that my actions have caused. I am prepared to die if you say it is necessary.
Immediately after she was read her sentence, she was confused and cursed at the judge.
Thank you. And probably see, I'll be up in heaven while y'all rotting in hell.
She then takes a sip from her cup and goes on to hurl other insults.
I know I was you ain't nothing but a bunch of scum.
Therefore, these proceedings are now
Putting
concluded.
somebody who was to death.
In the final days leading up to her execution, Wuornos was allowed to choose a final meal. However, she surprised many by opting for a simple cup of coffee or perhaps a hamburger from the prison cafeteria. This choice reflected her indifference towards material comforts and her readiness to embrace the inevitable. We hope you enjoyed this video. To watch more like this, click on the cards on your screen.